Hey everyone, welcome back to the Uded Casual. In today's video we're diving into something a bit special. I'm documenting the full journey of one of my favorite build transitions so far. We are going from my old lighting Conduit of Heaven Inquisitor, which you might have already seen on this channel, into something completely different, a Relic of the Pact Hierophant build. I spent a few days browsing in POE Ninja and testing different ideas, trying to find a setup that not only fits my playstyle but also feels cool to play in this stage of the league. After digging through dozens of builds, one theme kept catching my eye: Relic of the Pact, and the skill which is granted by the unique wand, Blood Sacrament. So the video will walk through the step of the process. First we'll cover how we use the trade system to get every key pieces of the gear for the transition, and I'll keep track of the total cost. Then we'll get into gear adjustment in terms of catalyst, quality, socket colors, this kind of stuff. And then we'll break down the main mechanic of the build and the way Blood Sacrament work, as well as super mechanic for like the Impale effect coming from the gloves and the shrine synergy given us by Armour and Helmet. And of course, once the build is ready and the swap is complete, we'll go through some maps, and we show also the Searing Exarch and the Eater of the World fights. So if you are curious about how to transition from one build to another in a clean and efficient way, I feel this can be a useful video for you. And of course, it could be useful also for the build itself. If you find the video helpful, or if you just would like to support the channel, feel free to drop a like, subscribe and comment. And definitely share your thought or suggestion in the comments. I love to hear what you think or how you would enhance the build itself. Thank you for being here, and now let's jump in. Alright, now it's time for some socket color adjustment, starting with the body armor. This one is going to be super easy because it's an armor based chest, which means rolling all red socket is pretty much guaranteed. We'll talk more later about why we need specific colors on each item, but for now just know we are aiming for all red sockets on chest, glove and boots. Now, gloves and boots are a bit trickier. They're energy shield based items, which means they naturally lean toward blue socket. So getting red ones is much harder. The most efficient way found to handle this is to use some chromatic orb and jewelry orbs. And yes, I've included the cost of those in the final build budget. I usually start by forcing 2 red sockets at the crafting bench, and then I keep switching between 3 and 2 sockets until I hit the third red, and then repeat until the fourth is also red. Same process. Once that's done, I use the same approach on gloves, and we have all the red socket we needed. Now, some of you may have noticed we adjust color socket of a body armor different from the one we bought. That's because I actually bought a lot, at least 3 different body armor, and the reason why is that I made a mistake. I underestimated the difficulty to satisfy the strength requirement of the body armor. So I strongly recommend to look for one with a low strength requirement, otherwise you will need to find a way to satisfy that requirement, which is not easy. Alright, we got all the items we needed, the right socket colors, the anoint, and the kit stats value. I tracked the total cow spent, excluding a couple of cheap flasks I already had, and I just slammed on some Instilling Orb for use when charge is full, even though ideally would want use at the end of Flask Setup. Also a quick note, we bought 2 rings, one for 10 chaos, I forgot to record trade for that one, and the other one for 80 chaos, the one we got the record for from the POE trade. For the total cost I included the more expensive one to keep it as worst case estimation. I also added the Orb of Regret needed for the final swap. All in, the build setup cost me around 3.2 div, but honestly prices are dropping fast, and I included all the things I mentioned before, so like the build actually should cost around 3 divine at most. So everything's ready and we can jump into the actual transition. Good, now the transition is complete and we can discuss the final results. The passive tree is basically in work just to enhance strength in order to satisfy the requirement of our body armor, and also try to get an advantage from all the strength we get. And a lot of notes regarding block chance in order to hit the highest percentage as possible, which with the Rumi's concoction reaches 78% both attack damage and spell damage block. A lot of note regarding life and block, and pain attunement for the more spell damage on low life. We will be always on low life if we are delivering damage, and at least one jewel socket in order to elevate our dissolution of the flesh. Alright, so the main mechanic of our weapon, Blood Sacrament, and that's very easy word the way it works. We basically channel the skill, and once we have enough life reserve, and when I say enough I mean the maximum amount, it auto casts the spell. We can actually also cast the spell with a single click. Simply stop holding the button. The way we want it to work, it's always hold till like the last moment, but this situation actually never occurs because our purpose is to enhance the reservation of Blood Sacrament in order to make a single cast, a single button press of the spell itself to reserve instantly almost the entire amount of our life. So in order to do that, we allocate a lot of constant reservation multiplier skill and of course utility for the Blood Sacrament itself in order to use a single hit to reserve the highest amount of life possible. In this particular case we reached 78% life reservation. Also, which is a good synergy for us, the Essence Worm Ring reduce reservation efficiency of skill, which is actually a big upside for Blood Sacrament because it helps us reserve even more life. Indeed, if we just remove the ring, as you see, I'm holding, I need to hold the button in order to feel Blood Sacrament. But with that reduce reservation of the skill, it's way easier to deliver the damage with the skill itself. So this is the main synergy when we look at it from the point of view of the Blood Sacrament itself. The other good synergy is between helmet and body armor, and in particular the synergy in terms of shrine, the increased effect of shrine buff from the body armor, and the trigger level 1 create lesser shrine from the helmet, plus the increased the more 75 increased effect of shrine buff on us and the duration itself. So we like to gather shrines along the maps. This, in combination with all the shrines from the Atlas skill, lead to ourselves to be a real monster during maps. The other important point are the gloves, and in particular we can just keep the idea of Grand Call of Steel. We can start talking about critical strike with spell inflict Impale. Indeed, every time we hit something with spell, we almost always crit, even if our crit chance is not even if our crit chance is not at 100%, it's actually all just at 56%, but this is more than 56 because critical strike chance is liking when we are on low life, but if we are actually delivering damage, we are on low life. So it should be around 78% if we consider that the lucky roll for the critical hit. So let's say our critical hit Impale. How Impale work? Impale is a debuff which basically it's applied to an enemy, in our case by our critical strike, and it record the 10% of the damage which applied the hit, and every single hit after the first one reapply this damage as reflected physical damage to the enemy itself. And the hit which trigger an Impale effect can apply another Impale effect. That's the way it works. So basically multiplicative damage, to be easy. And Call of Steel, basically it's a spell which we almost never use it, which recall to us the Impale debuff from any enemies or dead enemies in around us. The other important piece of gear, and actually the reason why we stack so many MP red socket now on our items, is the Untouched Soul. We actually use the simply the statement for the maximum life for each MP red socket. Also on the helmet you can notice the white socket, and from it come the 18% to all elemental resonance. Ideally we would like to have another white socket so it's easier for us to cap our resistances, but it's just fine. The other piece of gear is the belt. nothing special about it. As many strength as possible in order to satisfy the hardest requirement of the body armor. The Rathpith Globe, it's actually a very common shield, nothing special about it for any sort of life stacker build. Here we have our Essence Worm, which we use for the 80% reduced reservation efficiency, so it's easier for us to instantly fill the Blood Sacrament. And here we allocate our Pride Aura, so we get enemy take more physical damage. Now, in this particular setup we include the Wondertrap, a pair of boots which actually are very cheap. Are unique pieces, and I like the idea to have almost every single piece unique rarity. And we can actually always use the 100% increased rarity when we are all on life, because if you are delivering damage, we are on low life. If we decide to take this pair of boots, we are forced to look for a ring which can balance at least the strength requirement of the body armor. That's the only way we use that ring. Indeed, this kind of combination of items, I suggest to look at them as the last two pieces for the build itself, because if you are not lucky, you are not able to look for and find a good ring with a high amount of strength, the better option probably would be to have a realistic pair of boots with life, resistances, movement speed and strength, so it's easier to satisfy the strength requirement with a common rare ring. Alright, regarding Flask, the Bismuth Flask just to fill our resistances, the Replica Witchfire, so we can get the level 21 vulnerability to let enemy take more physical damage, the Rumi's Concussion, so we can cap our chance to block attack and spell damage, an Amethyst Flask because we need some kind of way to enhance our chaos resistances, which is not particularly high, and a Quicksilver just to move faster during maps. The other important unique piece is the Dissolution of the Flesh, in this case the 24 maximum life, so not a max roll, but it was cheaper enough. The important point from this item is that the life that we would lose when we take damage is instead reserved. And so every single mob that hits us in maps have the same effect that Relic of the Pact have on our life. Plus, if we don't take damage for 2 seconds, our entire amount of life reserve, like exactly in the case of Blood Sacrament, it's instantly restored. Alright, finally it's time to put the build to the test. We'll start with a T16 map and then take on Searing Exarch, Eater of the Worlds, and one of the bosses from the Mercenary League, to see how the setup holds up. I hope you enjoyed the video and found it useful. If you did, don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps me out, and feel free to drop any feedback, whatever it's about the video, the build, or anything you do different in this kind of setup. Stay safe and I'll catch you in next one. Thank you.